we will start with, you want to do the karakia? If we should, it's only a small crowd, I'm happy for it to go around. But take away.
I'm happy if somebody else would like to start the day with our karakia. I'm happy to do it
Robbie.
myself.
Ben, do you want to do our karakia? Ka pai tēnā. Well done.
Whakataka te hao ki te uru, whakataka tau te hai ki te tonga, I mahina kina ki auta, I mataratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, e tio, I huka, I hau, mo hi hau, te he mariora.
Ka pai tēnā, Ben. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start off with on page 6 with health and safety. Well, that's not what you got here. just to, it's an update and a preliminary. So I don't believe there's any questions or I need any highlights on what that might be. Okay, so do we have to move this one? Okay. Apologies today. We have Pamela and Clyde at the moment. We do believe we saw Clyde 5 seconds ago, but he's finished.
I need to leave at 11:30.
11:30, and apologies for leaving early. We'll add that in.
Unless we've finished by then.
Well, our team, I think, has got some real slides to show, so it may not be. Yep. Okay, so can I have we're going to move the second, the apologies. I'll move it. Someone will second it. Which it was such a few of us, I just might go around the table. Right? Yep. Okay, Robbie. Okay, that's done. That's done. Confirmation of agenda. So with you planning to leave early, Ben, did you want to at least have a look at something before you leave? Are you all good?
Read it all. It's all good.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So can we have a mover for the agenda, please? Ben and Bruce and Ben. Okay. Here's a disclosure of interest. As you know, you're reminded of the need to be aware of maintaining clear separation between personal blah, blah, blah. So it's just there for your perusal. Our next agenda item is, where's that? Yeah, no, but where's it here? Oh, is that what that is?
Yes, it's a little funny.
Sorry, guys. It's the minutes. I'm trying to read of Jordan's run list as well as understand. So, minutes. Are we happy to take them as a read? And, yep, Bruce, Robbie, any matters arising that needs to be looked at or reiterated or... Nope. Nope. All good? Ben? Okay, I'm going to take them as accepted. So we're going to move in a second. Our next one is page 16, which is the farm plan implementation. Is that good? Tracy. Morena Tracy. Welcome to the table.
Thank
It's
you.
all yours.
There's a presentation. Please. Thanks. And next slide, thank you. So I was hoping today that I was going to give you an update on Plan Change 1, but it's the same message. We are still waiting from the Environment Court, but I'm really looking forward to the day when I can stand here and say something different. So the other thing is around freshwater farm plans. So, as you know, the government has been working to make these more pragmatic and cost effective. And our team is part of the regional sector, which is providing feedback to MFE to ensure that our thoughts are put into that, because it's really important to us that MFE understand that we have Plan Change 1 and what that means for farmers and growers in our region. Next slide, please. So look, what are we doing during this time? Our approach is still the same. We want to support farmers and growers to be their best. And we see working with our stakeholders and building up these trusted relationships as a really, really important part of doing this. And we are still working on the systems which farmers and growers are going to need to meet their obligations for Plan Change 1. I've mentioned previously that MFE have funded 2 fixed-term roles for us in the catchment space. Those people have started, which is excellent. So we're getting them out and about. We have Petra Franson, who used to work at the Greater Wellington Regional Council in the freshwater farm space. And we have Colin, who has come from Dunedin working in the catchment space. So come with a lot of experience and see things a little bit differently, which is awesome. Next slide, please. So last week, in a very cold hall in Kiki, we had our dry stock implementation workshop. We had an excellent turnout from Beef and Lamb and from the Beef and Lamb Farmer Council and the meat companies. And this was all around what can we do to support the dry stock sector. We know they don't have as much support as dairy. And so we wanted to identify, well, what does support look like? Because you've heard me say it before, there is no point us sitting in this office and deciding what is best for our stakeholders. That's not going to get the best outcome. And they came up with some really great practical solutions. For example, the stocking rate calculator being available offline. So when they can go out, into their wool shed or out on the farm. And a lot of them want to be involved in the testing of products. So that was awesome. Arable, it's not as big as dry stock and dairy, but they still have requirements under Plan Change 1. We're running an implementation workshop with FAR after the field days. Another key group are consultants, and by supporting industries, I mean like seed companies and the likes of QCons and Farm IQ. How are we going to work with them? What role do they want to play? So in Gina's monthly email, she just put out a request to see who was keen to have a similar workshop. And so far we have 20 people, which is great. And Hamish Smith and I talked to NZIPIM, again, a really key organisation which brings together a diverse group of rural professionals, including bankers, and they see their role as reaching those people that may not have anything to do with the likes of Dairy NZ or Beef and Lamb.
But what's the acronym mean, Tracy?
New Zealand Institute of Primary Industry Management. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I think it's really, really positive that all these different sectors are engaging with us and want to come up with solutions to make this succeed for people. Next slide, please. So something we've heard really clearly from farmers and growers is that there are already a number of farm plans out there, and why can't we just use those for Plan Change 1? And so what we've done is we've put a little project together to look at existing farm plans to see where the alignment is with Plan Change 1 and work with those providers to see, this is the gap, this is what you need to do to meet it. So it gives them the ability to change their system if they want to, but it also gives farmers and growers the confidence that their farm plan either meets the requirements or just needs a few tweaks. So I just wanted to show this as an example of we hear what the sector is saying and then what we're implementing. Next slide, please. So we hosted our Pan Sector event in March, which I had talked about at our last EPC. Thank you to Councillor Kneebone and Chair Story for coming and presenting. We had over 100 attendees. Again, the agenda was set because we asked our stakeholders what they wanted to hear from us. So we had beef and lamb, for Dairy NZ and Hort Sector talk about their strategies because they've all had a bit of a refresh. Really common theme, we need to work together, which was awesome. Session 2 was talking about what we as a council are doing in this space. And the third session is there's a lot of interest in catchment groups and what their role in this space is. There was a lot of positive feedback on the event, but the common theme again was we just want clarity. We just want to know what we need to do, which, you know, we hear. So there's this fine balance of, do we host an event, but we can't give people details. But if we don't have an event, then people want to know what's happening. Next slide, please. So we decided we're going to try something a little bit different. And we got a man called Dave Wood to be building this beautiful visual while the presenters were talking. It was really engaging, got a lot of talk happening. It is on level 3. If you'd like to go and look at the real one, it's ginormous. Next slide, please. So it's 2 pages and it was just phenomenal. It was amazing watching this man draw these things just from what we were talking about. And that is my update today.
We as Bird and Fish sit amongst all of this, considering it's to do. I thought they were inclusive in farm plans, to be honest, because of the land and of course the waterways. Where do they fit in all this?
Who was that? Sorry?
The Bird and Fish or Fish and Bird?
Oh,
what do they call themselves?
Fish and Game and
Yeah,
Forest and Bird.
Yeah.
Yes, no, they are a group we haven't connected with other than in the Whangamarino
Oh.
Action Plan project. Good point.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at farms outside Waikato, up along the river, they have a lot to say when it comes to some things. Any questions for her? Tracy? I must say that's colourful, but it's so full.
Yeah, you should go up to level 3 and have a look. It's very, very awesome.
Just a quick question. Obviously, you were anticipating PC1 would be through. Once it does, will there be a huge flurry of activity? What do you anticipate will happen once you are sitting here and telling us it's there?
I think what's going to happen when the interim decision comes out is there's going to be out there in the sector going, oh, it's here. What does it mean? What do we need to do? What are the dates? You know, and so I will be updating you how we are communicating and to those people and what we are doing. Yep. And then I will be giving you a plan around how we're ensuring that all the things that we need to put in place as a council so farmers can meet their obligations are going to be there on day 1 when the plan is operative.
And obviously MFE's given you some money towards extra staff. Do you think MFE understands PC1 and its implications for the Waikato?
Brent can answer that question.
So, at a staff level, yes, but you'll understand the current dynamics around the change that's coming through. That's not necessarily there's lots of tensions, and lots of different parties have got views about what the national regulation should look like, and that's one of the challenges that we will have in this region. Because at this stage, we are anticipating an interim decision from the court. We were anticipating it at the end of this month. So we're getting very close to the end of this month, but the court can't make its final decision until what's called Bill 2 goes through Parliament, and they're currently anticipating that might be August. If Bill 2 goes through the way that people are anticipating it, then the Environment Court could make its final decision. And so if the Environment Court makes a final decision sometime in August, early September, then you've got the appeal period. That appeal period then takes us out to a period in maybe late September, and you all know what that means, that there won't be an opportunity for then this council to make Plan Change 1 operative, which would then roll that forward through to the next triennium. And so and why is that particularly relevant is that the Crown is talking about the new freshwater farm plan regulations coming out at about the same time. And so they will potentially look a bit different than Plan Change 1. And one of our challenges for our farmers and growers is to help them when they're looking at two things which could look quite different. Yeah, and so that's going to be a communications challenge. So when we get more information from the Crown around what the regulations might look like, we will then need to have conversations with them around implementation of the, remember the first time around there was a rollout, and this council was early on in that rollout. And so we're going to need to have some really good thinking about what might that look like best for our farmers and growers. But coming back to Plan Change 1, if Plan Change 1 does become operative beginning of next year, then there's the key thing then is that there will be, if it happens the way that we're anticipating it, there will be a 12-month period for a large number of farmers to submit farm plans to take advantage of the permitted activity opportunities that sit within Plan Change 1. So that would be a really busy time, which is why Tracy and her team are really trying to line up as many partnerships as we can with anybody, whether or not they be banks or industry or providers, so that we can support that group so that they get the advantage of that permitted activity status. Because one of the interesting things, and Robbie might know a bit more about this than myself, I think it's Westpac are coming out with a new loan structure, which means that you can get margins off your
environmental stuff.
Yeah, if you've got a farm plan in place, you've got other measures in place. So there's a number of people out there who are looking to try to support.
Even Fonterra's doing that itself, I think.
Yeah,
It's giving cheap loans to shareholders that are doing environmental.
and so Tracy's team are stretching their fingers out to try to engage with as many as we can who have the common objective about supporting our rural sector, because come the beginning of next year, they're going to have obligations coming at them from all sorts of directions. Yeah.
But it also means potentially that our region will be split between PC1 rules and farm plan rules that apply to the rest of the region that are different, possibly.
Well, as it currently stands, the national regulations would apply everywhere. So if you're a farmer in the Waikato Waipa, you would have the national regulations that apply, and you would have PC1, which is that you recall that until the government had withdrawn the previous regulations, that the strong drive from this council was to try to get them to be the same, so that it didn't matter that they were the same. Now it's looking like they quite likely won't be the same, but we don't know the detail yet of how different they will be, to then figure out how best to support our farmers, because at the end of the day, everybody wants there to be one plan that meets all obligations.
And I guess that could almost be a case for judicial review if PC1 comes out, or appeal if PC1 is tighter and tougher than the national regs.
Well, I'm not a planning lawyer, but judicial reviews are on points of law, and so
Appeal.
But to appeal, there has to be on a point of law,
Right.
not on a substantive issue like that. And so one would struggle in my mind to see how that was they made a legal error. It's the two instruments might have different requirements. Say, for example, different requirements about who needs a plan, when does it need to be certified or not, when does it need to be audited or not, those sorts of things. They are, when they're different like that, it becomes quite a challenge for the farmer and the grower to be able to have, because they'll be getting different messages from different places, which is why we're Tracy and Gina are doing a whole bunch of groundwork so that our farming community sees us as the trusted place to get the right advice. And when we don't underestimate the challenge that comes with that, because people are getting advice from any number of different places, but it takes quite a bit of time, to build up to the place where people go, yes, I trust when I get this information from this source, it is a source of truth, which is a work that Gina and Tracy have been doing over the last 12 months to try to get to that place. So
Thank you for a very detailed and
David,
useful
it's been
explanation. Unfortunately, it will probably fall to the next council if we're stuck in the middle of it just in September. So
Well, PC1's been around for a while, and this council of newbies is no different than last term. So, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for your presentation. So going forward with farm plans, is it the concept for now to have a portal that if an existing farm plan, whatever, if it's beef or sheep, dairy or port, is what it's missing, will have a an attachment for PC1 or?
So what we're going to do is then let's say it's the Te Ake plan.
Yeah.
We're talking with Fonterra, we'll show them the difference, and then it would be up to them to decide.
To put it in or not?
And the other thing we're doing is we're working with those providers around this digital highway so that farmers don't need to input information twice. And
Yeah.
so if, they've got all this information in their Te Ake plan that we need, if they just tick a box, then it can come into our system.
And working with FAR, I was actually thinking of standing for the Waikato committee. I had a talk with a couple of Dairy NZ people and they said don't bother, but it was interesting. But the alignment with FAR with other groups like Dairy NZ that do research and very similar things, those organisations need to work better. They should be working, when you're talking to them, they should be talking as a sector, not as individuals, because they can become very fragmented of where they're going. That's all I'm pointing out, because that's why they said don't bother going to FAR, because they're fragmented. Stay away. So I'm just putting a
but so I should have explained it a bit better. So while FAR and us are organising the arable together, it's definitely got the Dairy NZs and others in it.
Yeah, because the research they definitely have issues with who's doing research for what, and so I just wanted to explain that.
No, great, thank you.
Yeah. And biggest issue with FAR too is there might be an arable growing group, but the biggest group they're growing for is actually dairy farmers. So it's their research needs to be towards dairy, not actually just growing grain crops for grain. Yeah, so there's a big void in there. That's what I mean. Dairy NZ and them are having a pushy bargy all the time. Yeah, so thank you, but good presentation. Thank you.
Stu.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Sorry. Oh, you can, yeah. Hey, it was just an addition. One would anticipate a bit more demand, hopefully, on our catchment restoration funding going forward. To my mind, it should, and I realise this is an ICM issue, but we shouldn't be allocating any sort of funding for restoration work on farms unless those farms are complying with any farm plan regulation rules as well. And just as an FYI, I'm pushing the same approach from the River Authority as well. That was all.
Stu.
Thank you, Stu.
Could I add to that? Or if no one else? Could I add to that what Stu just said? And it might not be for the PC1 catchment, but totally agree with what you just said, Stu, because we were at Rikawa the other day and the water quality, how it diminished from the Blue Springs to Matamata, it's an issue. And I then went for a drive the other day and I was going to a mate's child's birthday party, and I went, I wonder what the water quality is of the Waitara. And similar sort of distance, yet you could still see the bottom of the river in the Waitara River, but you couldn't see the bottom of the Waihau. So just, he makes a good point that if you're going to, if we're going to invest in catchment restoration, it should be on the farmers that are actually doing the rules correctly too, to say you need to comply to get the funding. So, good point.
Food for thought, Tracy. Yeah, food. Hmm?
I think,
Unbelievable.
Robbie, that's part of, because obviously a lot of that support funding comes through integrated catchment management. And I think that's part of their criteria, that they don't fund works that you're obliged to do. And of course, a lot of the works that are coming through in farm plans are not yet works that people are obliged to do, which one would hope maybe incentivizes some to go quicker because they can see that those obligations are coming.
Just as to sort of further explain, Brett, my point is acknowledging what you've just said really around the fact that, you know, for example, if there's a 2-year time frame before which you have to have your farm plan certified or whatever, or submitted, I still think we should use what I've just talked about and Robbie said as a little bit of an incentive to try and get people to speed the process up. And look, if they're going to leave it till the 11th hour and only do a farm plan because they have to, then that's a reason why we probably shouldn't be using ratepayers' money to help fund some of their restoration work, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes perfect sense, Stu, and I'll get Tracy and Grant Blackie, who oversees a lot of that, engage regularly to because they both are doing work in catchment. So it'll be a topic that Tracy can again reinforce when she's talking with Grant, so that they're giving the same advice to landowners. Thank you.
Yep. Cheers.
Just to pick up on that, are you saying, Brent, that if someone is required to do catchment management in their farm plan, you wouldn't then give them council money?
So there's the funding comes through the integrated catchment management side of the business, and one of the criteria that they have for providing funding is whether or not your regulatory, it's a regulatory obligation upon you to do. And so that's been the history of that. Because there's been no regulation in this space for some time, the history has been supporting people to do things when it's not regulated. But once it is regulated, that committee that Robbie leads has the policy of saying, well, they will fund exactly as Stu's described, works that are beyond what is regulatory required.
Right. Thank you.
If I explain it, Ben, if you go and get a Teriyaki plan, it will say it will have work that you need to do to comply over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So if you comply with that, then you'll be able for funding. That's all it's saying. So you meet the national standard. That's all. That's all you're trying to say. Yeah. And you're not the bottom trying to get a cheap ride to the top.
Unless you're building a fence. So thank you, Tracy. I do remember that once upon a time, I thought we were all looking at, when it first started, PC1 was how that farm plans were going to be consistent over everything. So, of course, one doesn't fit all, but, you know, Fonterra, Dairy, whatever, they're all going to get together and have a template. Is that still viable, or is everybody does what they want to do as long as it meets a certain criteria?
So
Farm plans.
So in farm plans, what we're doing at the moment is we're putting a little bit of a document together looking at all and to see how different they are. And then for permitted activities, is that something that the council creates a template, or is it the likes of these digital providers that are already working in that space and doing it quite cost effectively? Do we work with them to make sure it can meet the needs? So we're just looking at the benefits of both, and then we're going to be putting a recommendation forward.
Thank you, because now that freshwater has gone up 5 more points, I guess our farm plans would need to be a little bit more authentic around making sure. But if you looked at what PC1 was all about in the first instance, and we kept to those criteria. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover for Tracy's farm plans, please? There you go. Choose who you like. Thank you. Well, you either got one or the other. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Have a good day. General items. Our next one is on page 19, which is the Waste Action Plan. And this is Valerie. Kia ora,
Just
Valerie.
make a couple of comments before we start.
Yeah.
So I welcome Valerie. So it's just an opportune time. We're getting towards the end of the triennium. The council kind of endorsed a waste action plan several years ago, and Valerie has been beavering away feverishly implementing the plan, and in a minute you'll hear how successful she's been in attracting funding from central government to support this work within this region, not just for the region but for our territorial authorities who have a lot of skin in the game around waste and the circular economy. And so we thought it was a good opportunity for Valerie to come along and give you a bit of an update of what's been happening over the last little while. So over to you.
So before you start, Valerie, welcome to the table. So just quickly for my own understanding, so waste as an environmental is a big word. So this is not just about waste treatment plants, whatever. It's about the whole scenario of how we are going to treat waste within Waikato. Yes?
So it is about solid waste, so not looking at wastewater, not looking at even biosolids are kind of on the fringe a little bit. It's really looking at municipal solid waste, but also industrial waste, but that's solid waste, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I'll provide a little bit of context to start with anyways.
All yours.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for having me. So as Brent said, I'm going to talk about the Waste Prevention Action Plan that we had endorsed. So that action plan went from 2020 to this year, and then we're going to be looking at what the next 5 years plan is going to look like. So you go to the next slide. So just to provide a little bit of context, noting this map is out of date and we are actually updating the map. This is a map of how waste and recycling flows in and out of the region. So in our region, we have quite a few open landfills as well as a number of closed landfills. So significant landfills would be Hampton Downs and Tirohia. Tirohia is probably going to close pretty soon. But Hampton Downs, for example, receives waste from Auckland, Bay of Plenty. We also receive waste from as far as Gisborne. So we have an interest in working with our partners, not just within our own region, but beyond. So as you may or may not be aware, most regional councils don't have a well-defined legislative mandate in solid waste. So we are one of few regional councils that has someone in a waste prevention role. And because of, and we've had someone in this role for about 15 or 20 years. I can't actually remember when it started. But we have the opportunity, and we have historically been quite innovative and kind of ahead of the game, because we have someone in this role. And the role that we provide is really focused on relationships, networking, bringing people together, especially in local government, but as well in the community resource recovery sector. We identify where areas of commonality in research could add efficiency. So that's a big focus for us. So all of this translates into the Waste Action Plan. So that previous plan, or the current one, has 4 focus areas which guide the work. So as I mentioned, collaboration and partnerships is very important. We do research and look for areas of innovation. In terms of advocacy and legislation, we really look across the region and do combined submissions and identify where our common areas are, and if there's areas of difference between a regional council and territory authority, we kind of let that go and do our own submission. But the whole point is that we are coming together to listen to what people are saying and where their pain points or opportunities are. And then, of course, as a regional council, we have a concern for safe disposal and hazardous waste as well. So if you go to the next slide. So in the report that I'll take as read, I covered some of the reports that we've published in the past 5 years. But the real reason why we're able to do that research and publish those reports is because of relationships that we have. So I just want to highlight the role that we play in bringing together waste officers from across the Waikato and Bay of Plenty regions. So that's through a group called, it's not a nice name, the Central North Island Waste Liaison Group, which is named that clunky name because it actually goes beyond the two regions. There's also members from Taranaki, Rupehu, Gisborne as well. But like I said, because basically waste flows to the easiest place, we're not looking at borders, we're looking at where we can work better together or share ideas. So that's a really important group. And through our relationship with them and through our the education that we do with them, we know where it makes the most sense to put energy in terms of research. The other network I just want to highlight is with community groups. So we also support a group, none of them are really nice names, sorry. It's a regional networks program. And so basically we recognize that we have a few really outstanding community-based resource recovery centers in our region. So in Point, Extreme Zero Waste in Raglan and Seagull Center in Thames. And those community groups were constantly being asked by other community groups who were up and coming to help support them in getting up and coming. So that's great. And they were doing it all voluntarily. But the problem was that as a community organization, that became really challenging. So we actually pay them for their time so they can mentor other community groups, which means our reach is going bigger. And it also means we have a excellent relationship with community resource recovery groups. So we know from their perspective as well how we can help support and how and if they're and linking up between local government and community. So if you go to the next slide. Part of the research that we've been working on is looking at reuse systems. So reuse as in moving away. So if you're not aware, there's waste prevention work is guided by what's called a waste hierarchy. And at the bottom of the waste hierarchy is disposal. And as you move up, the next step would be recycling. And as you get higher in the waste hierarchy, that's the behavior we want to see. And higher in the waste hierarchy is something like reuse, where you're actually not destroying a material, you're keeping a material in circulation as long as possible. So that's a great idea, and it's the way how things used to be done. But the question is, how can we get back to that? And so we've been doing research, starting with the stock take about what reusable systems we had going on in our region, moving into how local government might interact with those systems or help set up those systems, and then as well doing stock take and investigation and reusable packaging on farms. So we were able to publish the first two reports, but because the third report, the reusable packaging on farms, had recommendations around that were financial in nature, we're seeking endorsement to publish that report. So in terms of if we would action the recommendations in that report, I'm honestly not even sure because I'll talk about the next project, which has been taking up most of my time. But to publish it would be, I think, the first step. And then we would, in the next 5-year plans, find out where we would possibly action or investigate where we would action those recommendations if we decided to take them. So publishing this by no means we have to action them. But I think it is good to put it out there. It's been really important, I think, and the feedback that we've got is that it's been really important for us to be publishing the research that we're doing so it's accessible to our partners. So if you go to the next slide. So Brent mentioned that we have been able to attract central government funding. So the first project in this waste action plan that we attracted funding for was called the Circularizing Organics Project. And so that focused on looking at organic material and how we might circulate it through a closed loop system. The second project that we've been successful in is called the Waste Strategy and Infrastructure Plan Project. And I realize waste strategy and waste action plan are very similar names. And so I'm going to do my best to distinguish the two things. So the intention of this project, let me back up actually. Waste infrastructure, so solid waste infrastructure, historically has not been developed in a plan or cohesive manner. It just kind of pops up wherever, and by not having a plan, it means we're not able to work together or have that bigger view or find areas of efficiency, even with transport. So if you can imagine, each territory authority has their own contractors, they're all moving stuff all over the place. And we have a huge opportunity, even just within transport, to be more efficient. So we've had conversations about this for a long time amongst waste people in waste and waste prevention and waste officers. And the timing just became right with the research that we've done and the signals from central government in terms of what was available for funding for research. So this project, so the Waste Strategy and Infrastructure Plan project, is part funded by Ministry for Environment, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and ourselves. So it's a two-part project. The first part of the project is a waste strategy. So that essentially brings the partners together and does some visioning and really formalizes the project, formalizes what we're already doing, but adds some security for me that people aren't going to disappear for the project. We need some formalization to make sure that their engagement is carried through. But it also gives us an opportunity to collect data. Waste data is extremely poor. So it gives us a chance to put all that up and see what we're actually dealing with. The next stage of the project is the actual infrastructure plan. So that's where we're actually going to look at what's possible in terms of what's already out there. So there's a lot of this work already happening, but it's a matter of putting it all together and seeing where the gaps might be, either in terms of if it's a waste stream gap. So for example, there's a number of construction and demolition facilities that are planned, but maybe there's another waste stream that isn't being addressed. Or like I was talking about before, there's an opportunity to look at corridors for efficiency. So for example, with transport. So following on for that, once we develop a plan, that the next stage would be implementation. So this project is basically a feasibility study, but it enables us to support our partners. And again, we're acting as that conduit in the region and beyond. So it's really, I just want to highlight that because, oh, sorry. Yeah, next slide. That's good. So just to put everything in context, in terms of waste legislation and council plans and everything. So each territory authority is required to have a WMMP, which is a waste minimization and management plan. So that would come under their strategies. Our own internal waste action plan, that's a document for us. It doesn't dictate anything that's going to happen in the region. That guides our work, but that would be under council strategies. If you go down to the supporting documents, the Waikato and Bay of Plenty Regional Waste Strategy, that was the strategy that's basically bringing us all together for this project. That would be a supporting document. And then the eventual infrastructure plan, again, that would be a supporting document that would be used to help guide long-term plans and seeking additional funding in the next step. If you go to the next slide. So just to put everything in context, so this is the work that we've been doing for the Waste Action Plan previously. So a lot of it has been focused on research, and the next stage we're looking at actioning that research. So we're doing some stuff. So in terms of today, I just want to make everyone aware that we are drafting the next Waste Action Plan and make everyone aware of the project sorry for the names again, the Waste Strategy and Infrastructure Plan project. So that's the MFE project, and seek endorsement to publish the reusable agriculture report. Thank you.
So thank you, Valerie. I do know that it says in the paperwork that the present ends this year. So I'm also presuming that this going forward has a budget somewhere, and was the budget in a long-term plan, or we know about the budget. What I don't want to do here is to talk about the budget to see if you have a budget to do this, because for me and this group is to understand that is this plan, because I see here in one of your pages is the 3 key evaluation questions You know, how effectively did this, what value does this, and what are the learnings from this? So for me, going forward, without worrying about what the budget might be, is that we tick those boxes anyway. And this is why we are looking at going forward, because one, all of these boxes have got a good answer for. Okay, question. Ian.
Yes, so I want to talk about budgets, sorry. So on item 13, we are seeking endorsement from council for publication of this report, as one of the recommendations relates to funding. So how much, I mean, in terms of publishing this report, will it be done electronically? Will you be done, and how much money are you spending on the actual publication of this report? Because you're wanting endorsement of that. And secondly, there's an application here, a joint application to the Waste Minimisation Fund. How much is our council committing itself to doing that by publishing this report?
So that's two different things. So the reusable systems on farms report would have, it costs nothing. We're just publishing online. In terms of the reason why it needs to seek endorsement for funding, for publication, is because the recommendations mention funding. We're not committing any funding to it. The recommendations just say WRC and TAs could look at funding pathways to establish reusable systems on farms, but we're not committing anything to it. And it just means we just publish online through our own systems.
Okay, because normally if you get a special endorsement to ask for publication relating to funding, there's some sort of money requested at that point. So,
Councillor, if I could just jump in there. So normally when we have a technical report of this nature, we publish it.
Yeah.
And so what I've asked Valerie to do before publishing it is in a no surprises thing, because the report makes recommendations that this council and other councils should do certain things, should fund certain things to support the rural sector in relation to the reuse of these packages. And so whilst we just wanted to make it clear that we're not committing any funding of council in the recommendation, but equally we didn't want there to be a surprise for the council that a technical report had gone out recommending funding. So we just wanted to have that conversation. So there was absolute clarity. There's a report that recommends some things happen in the future. If we were going to come and make a recommendation to this council to fund something, that would come through an annual planning process. But like I say, it was just for transparency to ensure that you're aware of that. We thought best to have the report before you first, and then we release it.
thank you. And you'd be applying to the Waste Minimisation Fund for that?
No, we've applied to the Waste Minimisation Fund for the last project I talked about. So that's the Waste Strategy and Infrastructure Project.
Yep.
And we were successful in that application. So that's secured. We have a deed with MFE for that. So it's all covered. We're not seeking additional funding for it.
And the quantum of that in the time period, Valerie?
So we received, I think it's 300,000 from MFE for that project.
The reason I mention that, councillor, is as Valerie mentioned before, this council is one of the few councils that are being forward thinking to have a role like Valerie's, and having a role like Valerie's has meant that we were able to attract that $300,000 worth of funding to come into this region on this topic. And so sometimes you have to be in the game to be able to attract that funding, and so that enables Valerie to then attract other support funders like Plenty, and then we can grow the size of the work they're able to do to support activity in this space, in this region.
And so just to clarify, stage one, so there's a waste action plan which is already funded. Then there's a waste strategy.
Yeah, so the Waste Action Plan is our internal document that guides the work. It basically communicates what we're doing to the public.
Yep.
It communicates the work that kind of says we're a regional council. We don't have to do this, but we are doing it because it's important. And these are the focus areas that we're going to do. So there's again, that's an internal document that we do provide publicly so people know what we're doing. So that, and I realize it's confusing because it's a waste action plan and a waste strategy. So those are, maybe we'll come up with some better names that provide more of a distinction.
And so stage one is a waste strategy for the Waikato and Bay of Plenty.
Yes.
And then stage 2 is the waste infrastructure plan.
Yes,
So are we ready at stage 2 or are we only at stage 1?
we're just at the beginning of stage 1.
Okay, so that's, yep.
New plan.
I guess fees, costs will come back later on. Okay. In terms of the map you had with Tirahia, what's going to happen when that disappears? Does that leave a huge gap in our region for waste?
So my understanding is that it's not, they haven't totally decided they're going to close it. And maybe Brent, I don't know if you know about their more than I do, but that's what I understand. But potentially, yes. The issue is that the whole country creates waste, and so the whole country has to deal with waste. So, like I said, waste flows to the area of easiest place. So, you know, I know there's proposals to put a new landfill in around Auckland, but no one wants them.
No.
So ultimately, if no one wants them, we need to stop creating waste. So that's the focus that we have. So that's where we're looking at putting in reuse systems. So that's reducing it, where we can put in better recovery systems. So for example, in construction and demolition, like chipboard, timber, like all these, we can also design better to eliminate waste. So that these are the kind of things that it's not rocket science, and it's the way that things used to be done, but it's shifting things back to those and normalizing those things. That's the difficult part when, yeah.
But at the moment, somebody's driving from Gisborne with waste to deliver to Tirahia.
They do that to Tokoro.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, the waste minimisation fund itself recently got cut back, didn't it? Where is that sitting at?
The waste minimization
The government's
fund.
one. Yeah.
So central government, so the way that so rolling back, every time you throw away waste, there's a levy. That levy goes to central government. 50% of the levy goes to central government. That was earmarked for waste minimization if it went to the waste minimization fund. And then the other 50% goes to territorial authorities. Central government now, under urgency, expanded what the 50% they were allocated could be used for. So it might not necessarily be for waste and waste prevention. There is currently a consultation out on amendments to the Waste Minimization Act and the Litter Act, which are suggesting that the territory authorities could also expand what their portion of the levy could be used at, which from a waste perspective, we are opposing that because while we might get environmental benefits, we're not going to solve this problem, and the levy is attached to the generation of waste. So there's, yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Bobby.
I was just going to talk about, been to a couple of Federated Farmers meetings, and they are definitely involved in reducing farm waste. They're talking to all their providers that they want, excuse me, supplies put in reusable bags, or that they're not bags that they have to dispose of. Excuse me. But honestly, the biggest issue on dairy farms, especially dairy farms, is stack covers. Stack covers. Like on my farm, I go through about 1 kilometre. Well, maybe not 1 kilometre. It'd be a good. Actually, no, our family would use 1 kilometre of silage covers a year. 1,000 metres of the stuff at 18 metres wide. It is the real serious issue of agriculture, of what you do with that stuff once it's been contaminated by silage and other things. And it is huge. Like, the bags are small, the slings are a real issue. Everyone wants to provide things in a sling instead of on a reusable pallet. They're all the big issues out there. Is, you know, most of the providers now take back all their chemical drums if they're washed, so that's not an issue. But really on farm, it would be contaminated material from grass silage or maize silage, dirt contaminated with dirt, and then it's not recyclable. So this large amount of excuse me, when you're talking about that, you're talking. Yeah.
Take care. Yeah. We'll come back to you. Thanks, Valerie. As you know, I love your work, and I've read each one of those. So not in this agenda, but I read it when it first came out. They're all amazing, and I'm so glad we've got them. So first of all, totally endorse releasing work we've done in the name of transparency and just logic. And obviously noting that financial stuff, if it comes back to us, it does. But that's for a future council to think about. The comment you had in here about having evaluated the last waste action plan and the value it provides, it was 10 CI where it talks about key learning was to raise the profile and awareness. I totally agree with that. I mean, as I've travelled around the districts talking about the climate action stuff, the councillors and the TAs are so interested in waste topics. And even when I recall last Tranium, I think it was unanimous support for the waste action plan as well around the table. I just find it to be such a not polarized topic, which is so nice. And so I think the raising the profile and awareness is one thing. Hopefully for next Tranium, it'd be great to see what else we can do in this space. I'm guessing that from reading this, that the strategic direction that's being set next Trinium is where councillors would have some input into the next iteration of the 2026 to 31 plan. Is that about right? Or is there another point at which you'd come back to us to have some input? Or is it like right at the point of, here's the plan, we wrote it over the last few years, endorse it?
So remind me, Valerie, I think last time the action plan went through policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's council feedback on the work program, and whilst it doesn't necessarily commit funding, because that obviously happens through the LTP and the annual plan, it provides staff with the direction of travel that council is keen to follow, so that then we can come back when it's time for funding conversations to be able to then, in that environment, articulate how we'll be delivering the direction of travel that that council is setting. Because these things, and there would have been a reason why we have them in 5-year chunks, so that you can actually get some momentum and get a direction of travel. Because it's a relatively low resource part of our business. We have Valerie and we have some contracted services and some direct costs, but Valerie does some stellar work of going out and reaching out and getting a whole bunch of money to add to the coffers so that we can deliver a bunch of this work. And a lot of it's delivering the work for our districts who are responsible for, as Valerie said, around waste management. And so the things that you've raised, Councillor, around each district having to do its own thing, thinking about its waste, coming together gives them a bit of a plan. And places like Tihia, there were plans originally for how long that site would last based on the amount of refuse that was coming from different places in the air space. So landfills work on air space. But that airspace suddenly got a price tag on it. There was a value to it, and it was more cost effective, I'm presuming, for people from Gisborne to send their waste there and use the airspace than to create their own airspace, which means that landfill is probably filled up faster than what maybe they originally anticipated. And of course, you have to plan these things out quite a long ways in the future, isn't it, Valerie? And so that infrastructure planning is pretty critical to then help territorials make their decisions around the long-term option if there's no other recycling and recirculating option for their waste. So it's pretty critical work, which is why all of the territorial authorities are all supportive and have their people engaged with the work that Valerie's doing.
And in regards to timeframes of, stage 1 was just beginning, it sounds like, and then when would stage 2 be finished about having this in?
2027. It's a 2-year project. So stage 1 is only 6 months long.
Yep.
And that's really just about getting ourselves organized. And then the next step is, but there's a considerable amount, as you can imagine, of consultation that's going to be involved. So in terms of getting talking about the work that we're doing. We are going to be going around quite extensively to talk about not necessarily the work that we're doing, but to develop the infrastructure plan as a cohesive group of stakeholders.
I can imagine it took a long time to get around that, or just our TAs, and you've got to get others as well. I guess last point was, I really like what you're doing in the Central North Island Waste Liaison Group. I had a read of the terms of reference recently, and I'm actually quite jealous that you've got that, because that is the kind of thing I'd love to see in the climate space, noting the close links between in the climate action roadmap with the circular economy work. So just really keen to elevate that because of its non-polarized nature and its critical links with material use and all of it. And just really would love to learn from you in that space, how we can get that happening in a few hours. Thanks. Yeah, great work. Really endorse the recommendation.
Robbie, do you want to continue?
Oh,
Not much more.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just mentioning about the real issue of on-farm waste. Yeah, and I hope, and I don't know if they should be doing it, but like I've been to Australia, and they have, instead of having slings, they have pods. They have a reusable pod that you just take to, if it's whatever product is going in it. It's got a manual thing, a handle. You open it, drops out. It seems a lot better. It might cost a bit more the startup, but seriously, that most probably's got a 20-year lifespan instead of a sling that's got, you use it once and you can't reuse it because under health and safety it can't be used again. So there's a real issue. I think we need to put pressure on industry that slings are not a very good way of moving product around. But, and the other thing is, I hope, and some of is better comes out of your work is you always see the odd bit of land that's getting a bit of stuff pushed over a hill. Some developer's got a mate that's a farmer and wants to get rid of stuff. And it seems to happen quite often all around the region, and some ring fencing about that, how it's meant to, as a strategy of how we might take control. And yeah, just we're in court at the moment over one of those sort of things. I know that was on an industrial scale, but with Porters and that, but yeah, Les Harris Contracting. So there's all these, but it's, you know, those little things become big problems in the future if we don't know what's actually being put there and the material that's there. So I know people say it's clean fill, but are we really sure it's clean fill, or it's just, yeah, so I hope in the future we have a real good strategy of how to control all waste and industry waste that should be recycled in a proper, manifold way, that we can use it for other things than just pushing over in a gully and we don't know what's been put there. That's most probably got a creek at the bottom of it. So yeah, thank you.
There's a lot of that that we have to consider, I guess, in your strategy or in your whatever you're looking at. So, Ben.
Yeah, just very briefly, I remember 2008, I think Robert Brodnax was working on silage coverage and how to dispose of them. I think that's how your position originally arose. What Robbie's raising, is it still a problem? How are you dealing with silage, plastic?
Well, I mean, we're not personally.
I know, but how is it being dealt with?
So there's a few things. There's ag recovery and there's Plasback, but I understand there's still recycling schemes. So it's not, and as you said, you know, if you have contamination, it can't be recycled. So ideally what we'd want to move to is some kind of either edible wrap or something that's recoverable in some way. So I know, for example, in the South Island, someone's developed an edible bale wrap, and it's made out of jute, and so the cows just eat it, and then there's no problem with, I don't know how practical that is actually on farm, but he seems to be, at least what I've read, is that he's got orders, ample orders. So it'd be moving towards a different system. Recycling is good and we want to support it, but it's not, we can do better than recycling.
Okay. possibly we could trial the jute here as part of your strategy.
That'd be great.
At the moment, I don't, that those silage wraps are disposable by, not the farmer themselves, they are collected off the farm and taken away. Who's next? Yeah, well, where we are, they're left in an area, someone picked them up. Tipper, kia ora. No, Tipper is here first, and then Stu after.
Thank you for the
Tipper,
work.
I got your name down first and Stu's next, so, yeah.
Firstly, thank you for the reporting and all the mahi. I'm glad we're doing something in this space. How do we use all of this to, I guess, impress upon contributing regions the work they must do, or where's our advocacy points into their plans? Asking the experts in the room. Thank you.
Good answer for that?
So just to be clear, you're asking how we're working with our neighboring regions in local government?
Working with, but also, I guess, impressing upon them to take responsibility for their waste.
So we've got longstanding relationships, especially with Bay of Plenty region. And so basically we've done a bit of strategy, which is that we've got really good relationships with those who are importing or exporting waste to our region, acknowledging that waste, it's not a us versus them. We all create waste, so it's everyone's issue, and I think it's a borderless issue. So, but we are strategically aligned with those who happen to be accepting the waste from other regions. So that enables us to learn together. So we do a lot of education as a group, but also know where their strategies are and how we can work together. So Auckland isn't part of our Central North Island group, but they have really ambitious targets. So their goal is to be zero waste by 2040. And we are looking to them for the work that they're doing in terms of rolling out a network of community-based resource recovery centers. So I guess I would say
zero waste in Auckland and is still exporting to other regions. Is that how they're going to achieve that strategy?
Yeah, well, zero waste means they wouldn't be generating any waste by 2040. So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's okay.
But I would say, I guess I would.
But I
would
guess
just note
when working with doesn't work, and I appreciate we've got to work with and yours, but when our voice of advocacy for councillors through this committee, so when working with doesn't work, how do we submit or advocate into their plans?
Yeah, we can do that when they come up, and we do. We submit on our neighboring councils' plans, definitely.
Okay.
But I've never had opposition in working with. It's always been we've always been able to work with our counseling our partners.
Okay, bye. Stu, last one.
Hey, thank you. Just a addition to Robbie's comments. It's one thing I was hoping the farm plans we could tack on as even just a possibly voluntary declaration. But I've got an example just down the road from me where a farmer, well-intentioned, he's got quite a bit of funding from Q2 Trust and Regional Council to set up to fence off an area, which is really cool. But about 200 metres away from where he's doing it, right on the roadside, he's still dumping all his farm rubbish, everything from barbed wire to old fences to plastic containers, you name it, it's going in there. And it's all going into a wetland swamp, that to me, that's a classic case where we being the council probably should have said, hey, you've got to stop doing that before we give you any funding. So just a progression really of how we do stuff. So just wanted to note that here. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Tracy, for your presentation. Yep. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, before you go, we have some recommendations, 1 and 2. So can I have a mover and a seconder for recommendation 1 and 2, or did you want to plan to do them separately? Koto? Bruce? Yeah. Bruce and I will do it. Good. Move on. Okay, so Paige, thank you, Tracy. We're now into page 92, which is the regional consent updates. Kia ora. And we have Anna Marie. Kia ora, Anna Marie.
Good morning. I have a presentation. So first item or detail, if you like, in my report in the agenda had a date of 13th of March. Actually, this report was generated on the 15th of May. So just wanting to correct that. And as per the last time I reported through to the committee, this report has two parts to it. One is an overview of the consents activities. In this case now, we're 10 months into the year, so up until the 30th of April. And then I've introduced a new section, which is just our watching brief on legislative changes that are on the way. So my 4 slides are going to briefly summarise the detail of the report. So if I could have the next slide, please. So in terms of consenting activities, some of the key features of the report that I update you on are about the number of applications that were processed in time. So at this point in the year, 30th of April, we had 602 applications processed and issued in time. And so that equates to 99.34%. There's further details in the report providing additional breakdown. Historically, this update includes an indication to you of how many applications have been processed externally. So at this point in time, or at the time of this report, there were 38 applications being processed by external planning contractors. We have at the point of this report 12 applications that have gone through either limited or full notification, and they're listed in the table with various details about where they are at in their stages. Happy to answer any questions at the end if you're interested in more information on those. And then in our second table, we have a number of applications that are going through either appeal or objection type processes. So there's 6 of those at the moment. And some of the details in the report confirm that things were underway in May. So things are progressing on various cases there. And then we've got the section of the report that gives you an update on water consents. So over the 10 months, 103 were processed and 22 of those were from the deferral queue. And in the deferral queue, there's 122 remaining. Next slide, please. So in my regular update to you, I'll provide some information on various fast track applications. So we, under the slightly older piece of legislation, NBEA, we've got 3 that are still in process. One is Annie's Way Solar Farm, Tauhei Solar Farm, an extension to that. So they already went through an EPA fast track process. So this is just for an extension. And then we've got a reasonably large scale project, roading project, the Cambridge to Paerere State Highway 1, that's still in process under that legislation. In terms of the brand new Fast Track Approvals Act that came into effect late, I think it was early February. Remember, there are what are called listed projects, and those are projects that are listed specifically in the legislation. And then there's a process for referral applications. People who are not listed, if they've got a project they think has merit, they can apply for referral. So in terms of our listed projects, we've got one that's been accepted by the Environmental Protection Agency, that is Oceana Gold Limited. So And then in terms of the referral applications, there's been
Yes.
2 that have just sought referral. One of those we have received notice from the EPA that they've accepted that referral application. That's Ashbourne Developments in Matamata. That was accepted on the 2nd of May. This doesn't mean they've lodged their applications yet with the EPA. They've just had the EPA say, yes, we accept your application has merit and you can now apply to the EPA for processing. There is another one that I haven't named there because we haven't got a decision just yet. And that was Gordonton, a development in Gordonton, a retirement complex residential development. So, thank you. The second part of my report and this slide is really just giving you confirmation that the regional consents team section is continuing to monitor various changes that are coming our way in terms of legislation and to anticipate what we need to do to change our services or our processes, our engagement with customers. So many of these you'll have heard about, and really I'm just a very brief update where we indicate that there's a number of these we expect to hear about shortly. A lot of the indications of date by central government refer to mid-25 and so on. So we don't have the RM consenting and other system changes amendment bill details yet. We did, as an organisation, lodge submissions, but what that actually will look like could be in the next couple of months. Again, for the national direction package, there's a number of national policy statements and environmental standards where they have indicated they will be coming out, seeking consultation. Again, that's that hasn't been released yet. We're waiting. The local government water services bill, last time I provided an update, this was really focusing around standards for wastewater treatment plants, municipal wastewater treatment plants, and perhaps by the next EPC update, we may hear a little bit more about that, and I'll be able to inform you. The freshwater farm plan regulations, you've already heard from Tracy this morning, and also on Plan Change 1, still waiting. So this is a very brief update to you that we're watching what might be coming our way, and hopefully by the time of my next report to you, we may have more detail on these. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. So it looks like you guys are on par. You know, one of the things we hear from the community is how long councils are approving resource consents. But looking at your paperwork, you guys are on par. Okay, so if I remember also correctly, I did ask questions about non-conforming resource consents for wastewater treatment plants, and I heard you just say something there, because I still believe there's 1 or 2 out there that hasn't quite come up to par. And also I do believe, I won't check my own box on this, but I do believe there is some work happening in a quarry on Waikato River that is also have some non-conforming consents with its quarrying. I wondered if you know or up to date with that. I don't need an answer today. It would be good if you came back to me on that one, and just reiterating on what non-conforming resource consents may be still out there for wastewater treatment plants, because that some of them have been non-conforming for some years, and I'm sure we should be over some of those by now. Okay, so just something you can come back to me about later. Okay.
Chair, so Anna-Maria's team will have completed their full year's compliance monitoring program by 30th of June. And so what we do then is the next EPC after that in August.
Okay.
one of Anna Maria's team leaders, Jack Blunden, who's been before you before. He will present you the full year's picture of what we've seen in terms of compliance across all of those sectors, including wastewater and the quarrying. So you can expect a pretty fulsome report in the August committee on what's been happening over that 12-month period. If I can just add, just before the questions come, councillors, around the legislative changes, you would have heard the government through the EAG report talk about a different system going forward, a system that would have more focus on authorising through national direction and then a bolstered compliance monitoring enforcement of that national direction. They call it effectively less consents, more compliance. And so that's one of the things that Anna Maria and her team are very closely monitoring to see what does that national direction package look like, because it's incredibly important for the regulated party to have real clarity about what they can and can't do, and because it's just not fair, frankly, if there isn't absolute clarity in that wording about what they can and they can't do. And so that's a really close piece of work that the team are monitoring to be able to input into the process, which will come back obviously via council submission process, to ensure that whatever system is established is absolutely workable for the regulated party within the region. So that's quite a change in approach from government, which we just want to make sure that our regulated parties really understand what that means when it comes.
Ben? Oh, sorry,
Yeah, I
Bruce.
think I was first, actually.
It was you first anyway. I'm
I
sorry,
did
Bruce.
press the button first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in whether you have any comment or insight on the statement in relation to the national direction package, that the national policy statement on freshwater is now not going to be entirely rewritten.
So as an implementer, we will give our advice on how implementable the policies are, as opposed to the substantiveness of the policy. What you'll get in terms of the substantive direction of the policy will come through the policy committee. It's quite important that we kind of make sure that we focus on the right things. And so from our perspective, we'll be giving guidance around this is how what would that mean in practice, implementing for our staff and for the regulated community, as opposed to the philosophy, if you like, of the policy direction. We leave that to the policy committee and the council.
Yeah, so but the amendments are likely going to be focused on very specific things, and isn't the implication here that the overall outcome being sought by the national policy statement on freshwater is going to largely remain intact?
I'm not over that. I'm not over that at all.
And I attended a 2-day conference recently in Auckland, the EDS conference, which talked a lot about the upcoming changes to the RMA. And at our local government New Zealand Zone 2 meeting on Friday last week, that was also a topic for discussion. And the general view around the traps is that time is now running out for the current government to actually get this sorted in a way that it can be dealt with until way towards the end of their term. And also that there appears to be some issue in Cabinet of disagreement around different elements of these matters, and the need, for example, to identify environmental thresholds, which are a core part of the revised RMA, is still a way off. So I'm just interested in your insights. I mean, what have you been hearing around the traps?
And I think I'd summarize it by, you don't hear a lot around the traps like you used to before. It's pretty, the feedback that you got from ministries in the past is a little bit less now. It's a pretty closed shop whilst they figure out what the policy direction needs to be. And so what what we do, what I do, is seek opportunities for them to hear what the implications for implementation for our communities might mean. So as I think it might have been you mentioned before, Ben, do they really understand what PC1 means? And so part of our role is to make sure they really understand what PC1 means, so when they put things in place nationally, that doesn't create a situation which becomes quite confusing for the regulated parties. And so one of the things that we're really conscious about is that if there is a move to more permissive regime but it's not straight permitted, it's permitted subject to conditions. How do we ensure the regulated party really understands what that means? Because that's one of the benefits of a consenting process. It's an engagement, and so the party leaves that process really understanding what it is that they need to do. And the challenge that we find with permitted activities, so for example, the National Environmental Standard had permitted activities around works around wetlands. Not the national government, but national governments put in place those rules, but the regulated person, the farmer on the ground, is so far disconnected from that rule they don't, that we have to step into the middle of that to really help the regulated party understand what the government rule is requiring. And so there's going to be more of that. So we can expect that we will have to do more work in that space of supporting the regulated parties, because the Crown has equally said they then expect people to comply and they want to strengthen compliance monitoring enforcement. And that isn't fair if you haven't fully informed the regulated party about what their obligations are. So I can see going forward, we'll have more work to do in the space of keeping our communities informed about the national direction that's coming through, which is why we're wanting to make sure things like the wording is very clear, it's unambiguous, people understand what it means, what they have to do to comply, those sorts of things. And sometimes there's a skill, not sometimes, there's a skill in writing that in a way that the parties really understand what it means. So that's where the resource use part of your organisation works, in trying to ensure things are done in a way that the regulated party can understand and implement.
In terms of waiting for clarity, how
Oh.
long are you thinking you're going to be waiting?
The government has given us a pretty clear steer that they're expecting to get this stuff done in this term.
We've got a year. Ben.
I was just going to congratulate Brent on a very skillful response to quite a tricky question from Councillor Clayson, asking for his opinion on national policy. I just had two brief things. One, in the legal shellfish, it's 30 opposed and 1 late opposed. Just in general terms, not on this specific, but what happens when you get a late application either for or against? Does it get considered or not considered, or does it get less considered than the ones that are on time?
In terms of submissions that might be late in a notified process, there has to be a decision about whether to extend the timeframe in order to accept that late submission. And so usually staff officers provide a recommendation to the decision maker about considering several factors about whether and providing a recommendation on whether they think there would be merit in extending the timeframe. So one of those factors would be how long outside of the timeframe it might be. One of the other factors might be, did that submission raise very similar matters that have already been raised? Various other things. So they provide a recommendation. So it's not always the same circumstances in each case.
Period each time.
Yeah.
Cool. Second one was beach scraping at Whangamata. What does that mean and involve?
That's a good question. I think I understand it. Brent may know a little bit more. So I don't know the specifics of that site.
So it's a common way these days for dealing with coastal erosion. And so when you have significant storm events, the sand normally gets taken off the escarpment up near the fortune, and then that's taken off to sometimes just offshore from the beach or in the low tide mark. When times settle, there's sand in that system that needs to be up on the dunes to protect the dunes. And so you basically scrape the sand back up to recreate the dune. And you'll see that's a very common thing that you might see around Whangapoa, all around that coastline, where community groups work really closely with their local council, the local council typically are the ones that hold the consent, but just moving the sand isn't enough. So once the sand's moved up and they recreate the fortune, then local community groups get in and they plant. And sometimes that works well for 5 years, sometimes it works well for 10 years, and sometimes there's another big storm in a year's time. And so it's a really, it's a bunch of years ago, communities got caught out because they didn't have these systems in place, and so their local councils became quite organised and they got their consents in advance so that they could be prepared for when there is a storm event. Everybody knows what are they going to do, because historically what was happening is that people would just go and dump things. They would throw rocks, they would throw all sorts of things, understandably, because they're concerned about the properties behind. And so this is a planned response to dealing with that coastal erosion.
Right, and it's sand, it's not actually putting in stones or anything like
It's
that.
sand from the system being
Yeah.
brought back up to where it had left effectively when there was a storm event. So yeah, it's good proactive work for communities to have confidence that if there's erosion, there's a pathway for getting that sand back.
Excellent, thank you. So just one last question from me is how long do we leave a consent in place? It's got here the Tahuna Aotea Moana application was lodged in 2018. You know, when do we pull the plug and make them restart? I mean, it's not costing us, I like to believe it's not costing WRC for it to stay in place, but how long is too long?
That's a very good question
Okay,
because
I don't want to know them because
it's a question I've asked the team as well.
So this is a really interesting one that I happen to know a little bit about because I asked the officer that very same question.
Okay.
This was and I don't use the word disrespectfully, a random individual that thought they might like to set up a marine farm, and they lodged an application.
Okay.
And it's in the system. And since it's being in the system, this individual has gone through the notification process. They have gone AWOL. And so it's sitting there
Excellent.
and we can't progress it because the person that we need to progress it with, the applicant, is not contactable. So it becomes a really good question, the chair, about, well, at what point can a regional council just strike it off? Because the current law doesn't give us the ability to just strike something off. And so effectively it's sitting there whilst we wait for this individual, it's a new development, to reappear.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. We will move and second this regional consent update, please, and say thank you.
Thank you.
Robbie and myself, I'm all good. So in my timesheet, it's got a 5-minute break. Yeah, and it's early actually. So, and after that, Ben, we only have 2 more items. So we'll take 5 minutes. We'll be back at 10 past. Yep, Bruce will do. Oh, no, I thought Robbie Tan went up. Yeah. Yeah, and Bruce. Yeah, well, you know, there must be something that we can get rid of it. Yeah.
We make a decision